Questions and answers on 5 steps to better SharePoint adoption. Companies follow a variety of strategies to achieve SharePoint adoption, but 5 components have proven to always produce better results. Regardless of where your company is in the platform adoption process, these steps will give you better ideas. In this short video, Curtis Hughes, CIO at Midrex Technologies, answers questions on 5 steps that need to constitute your campaigns. To watch the complete 1-hour course on 5 proven steps to improve SharePoint adoption, click the link below to go to visualsp.com.
So if we're to kind of do a recap, and I know some questions come in, I'll answer those in a minute. These are really the 5 steps. I mean, these 5 steps, if you could use these again as a checklist, I know there's a lot within these. You guys will have this and be able to go watch this later if you want to. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll show you my contact information at the end. But make sure you have a formal plan. You put people at the center of what you're doing. You try to build a bridge between all these things. You get rid of all these roadblocks that just don't need to be there. Make it easy, and then think differently about how you're going to train and empower your users. And all this, one of my favorite quotes, we have it all over the office. It's on the back of my Surface. We've got to think differently. I mean, if we want to do things differently, and adoption is not working, and it hasn't been working for years, then how do we change that? We can't keep thinking about it the same old way. We can't keep trying the same old things. I think that's the definition of insanity, right? We've got to think differently about how we do it. So for those that have stuck around, 2 quick things. If you guys want to download these tools, I've got the SharePoint feedback free to download. You want to install it at the site collection level, you can install that, download it, try it out. We're going to do a paid version and a new updated 365 version. Go to our website if you're free to download those. And then the self-evaluation. We've got a ton of other resources, white papers, all kinds of things on better intranets and adoption and all kinds of things there. So hit our website. And if you want to reach out, here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. We'll answer every single email I get. Would love to hear from you. Hey, here's what I'm struggling with. What would you do? Be happy to provide any insight that I could, no pun intended, for you, and I'll help you all I can. And I really appreciate your time. We've got 10-15 minutes left that I can answer some questions. So while this is up on the screen, let me go see what kind of questions we had, and I'll see if you want to jump into, feel free as well. Yep. Pop this out. So I think you guys can see these questions. Maybe not. So I think you saw that one. You answered it. Do you have a sample adoption plan? I do. Valerie, if you're still on, I have a sample adoption plan. I've actually got a workshop in week after Ignite. We're actually doing a workshop where we actually go through how to build an intranet or a SharePoint adoption plan. But yeah, reach out to me, Valerie Black, if you're still on. I'll be happy to shoot you over some samples and kind of what should go in an adoption plan and how you might approach that. Be happy to. You can see my email there, curtis@c5insight.com. Michelle, as a trainer, I'm really glad to see someone focusing on how important the right type of training is. Yep, absolutely. So those were easy. I thought we'd get some curveballs in here. Those were easy questions. So I appreciate all of it. If you got any more, again, I'm going to be on here. If not, we can give you some of your day back. Happy to stay on though if you've got any more questions or want to ask anything of me. There's some more coming in. Good. Thank you, Shelley. You talk about flexibility, but yet consistency. How do you find the balance? It's a great question. Gosh, probably a lot bigger than on here. I can, why don't I do this, Shelley? If you'll shoot me an email so I'll have your email address, I'll write you back and be able to give you more context on that. But it really is a balancing act. What you've got to find out, again, it's that rigid at the core, flexible at the edges. Consistency is really around the core things, making sure people know where it is, but giving them areas to play. So I'll give you a good example, and this might not be a great example, but if calendars are always on the right side, middle way down, maybe they can change how it looks and all these kind of things, but maybe it's in the same location. So that's just kind of a simple example, but there's a lot of ways to just try to find, what flexibility do they really need? What do we need to be able to have for them to do their job, but also how do we make sure it's consistent? Branding is one of the biggest things for consistency. We see a lot of branding inconsistencies, which is crazy, and that just drives people insane when they have to figure out where things are and it looks different ways and different colors and things like that. Karen, shoot me an email. I'll shoot you a sample adoption plan. Yep, thank you. Michelle, what do you see end users struggling the most with in SharePoint? It depends on who you ask. I mean, there's so many different things. I think the biggest thing that we see is just being able to find information. We're seeing, that's why I add that rot one in there. We're seeing a ton around findability. No matter when we go in and we do assessments, always within the top 3 or 4 is findability, searchability. We've got a bunch of stuff. I know it's great stuff. I just can't find it. Or maybe it's in multiple places, and that's where some integration and search is amazing in SharePoint. You can actually hook it into to a lot of different data sources, right? And have it search your file shares and websites and things like that. So I think search and findability is probably one of the top things, but also just being able to easily navigate the sites and being able to know where to go get things, it being crowded and just too much content. Um, is a big issue as well. And then permissions always comes up as far as, not being able to have the right access and those kind of blocking points and roadblocks as well. What are the more important governance points? So, Bill, that's a big one. I've got a whole governance session that I do. Bill, shoot me an email if you will, just so I'll make sure I have your question, because once I leave the webinar, I won't have the context of all these. Bill, if you could send me an email with this exact same question, I'll reach out to you and be happy to share some things. I can even show you what goes in a governance plan. Slide deck, is it available for download? Yep, it will be. How do you explain the why? A lot of questions coming in. That's great. How do you explain the why if users are not at all technologically savvy? That's a great question. And the key to the why, the short answer is, and it's a big question as well, the short answer to the why is to forget about technology, because that's really the how, right? That's the how do you do it, where do I click? Really what you're trying to do is tie it back to what matters to that person. If I'm in accounting and I'm working on expenses or purchasing, or I'm in AP or AR, how do I tie back the new intranet to this is going to be better for that person's role? And if you can't, you got to be honest with yourself and say, hey, have we just forgotten about this role? Have we forgotten about this group? Or is there something in there I'm not thinking about? So you've really got to tie it back. Forget technology at all. You've got to tie it back to here's why this is happening. We can teach you the how, but if you want to know why, this is why we're making you do this, because now you'll be able to go back and search the history of all the things we paid and start to see trends that we're spending a lot of money here, whatever the case may be. That's just one example. But why should be technology agnostic. It should not have to do with the technology. That's more of the how and kind of the training piece of it. Ken, shoot me an email. I can definitely show you some sample governance plans, charters, steering committee things. We've got all kinds of things like that. Karen, we're halfway through our delivery program, Wrestling with Adoption. Have leaders who want it to work but don't role model themselves. How do you tackle this? Sometimes you need a stick, I mean, there's no great way to tackle that. One of the things we do before we even get started is we make sure, and again, going through the charter and everything like that, you make sure that you've got that leadership buy-in. And I always say this: leadership buy-in and commitment is not signing it, by the CFO or the CEO or whoever signed it to say, yes, I approve that budget to do it. That's not buy-in and commitment. That's approval, right? Buy-in and commitment is, I believe in this and I want it to work and I'm going to use it too. And so the best way I think to do that is to understand these specific leaders. So they want it to work, but don't role model it. Figure out if there's specific ones, maybe it's a handful, figure out what matters to them. If it's a CFO or if somebody that's really cares about financial and the investment of this, and are we going to get our money back, and is it really helping people be productive, and the financial piece of it, tie it back to financial and say, hey, guess what? If people don't use this, it's because you guys aren't modeling it. And if they don't, we're putting all this money into it, and the investment is and the return on investment is zero. And so really understanding, I think that's the key to making anybody do something they may not want to do, is tie it back to, again, the why. Why should I have to role model this? Well, one, because you're a leader in the organization. That's probably not always enough. Let me tie it back to something that matters to them. Guess what? If your people don't use it, then you're going to have these things all over the place, and we're going to have to hire 3 more accountants to kind of manage this process because you're not following the process that we built on SharePoint. Oh, well, I don't want to hire 3 more people. So hopefully that makes sense, Karen. You got to tie it back to what matters to them. If management is not convinced with SharePoint, how to convince them to use SharePoint? Similar thing, Sunil. If the management team is not convinced, you got to tie it back to what's in it. And part of that, I hate to say it this way, but part of that should have been discovered up front. Are they likely to do it? Maybe they said all the right things, but now when the rubber hits the road, they're not really wanting to do it. But really, I mean, helping them understand, here's what's in it for you as well. And if you don't do it and you don't lead by example, this is what's going to happen downstream. And painting out that negative picture for them. Sometimes it helps to paint a bleak picture to get people to do action. You've got to really find out. I mean, it goes back, finding out what matters to those people. Does the SharePoint feedback tool work in SharePoint Online? It does, Ignacio. It does work in SharePoint Online. They've changed the framework online, so we're working really hard to get a new model out there. Hopefully, it should still install, but they've given us a time frame that basically saying, hey, this year, by the end of the year, it's probably not going to work anymore. So we're working hard, but it should work today. But we're gonna anybody that requests it, we're gonna go back and give them the new version as well. Couple more minutes. Sean, how do you most successfully approach ROT? Wow, that's huge. Yep, automated process or site owner engagement. It's a combination. It's never one or the other. So we've actually built out, and our team has built out PowerShell scripts on the technical side to actually go through and mine and find groupings of data. Maybe it's based on title and file size, and to try to find duplicate data. There's probably other tools out there. And then it spits that out into an Excel. So that's kind of one piece of kind of the first pass. So I would think of it like iterations. You've got kind of pass one, which is let us just try to find everything. And then we find out where that is. So it's for this department, that department. And then we send those out to the departments and to the individual site owners, and we have to get them involved. Unfortunately, it's not 100% hands-off because somebody has to decide, is this the right document or is this the right document? Or do you need both of them and this one needs to change its title because it's actually a little bit different. It shouldn't have been named the same thing. So it's a combination. Great question though. We've got a lot of different things on how you approach ROT, but really you have to figure out, I think, first and foremost, Sean, of what is redundant. I mean, that's pretty easy. You know, what is duplicated? What is outdated? That's a little bit harder. What does outdated mean to your organization? Some it might mean 5 years, 7 years. Some it might mean a year it's outdated, or 10 years. So figuring out that, the hardest one of all is this trivial. And that's why I say take a tiered approach, get the redundant first, then try to find the outdated and older things, and that can be automated. And then the last thing is the trivial. How do you define trivial? And trivial is probably different between people, departments, all kinds of things. So sometimes that takes a long time. That's kind of the last one you approach because it's so out there, and there's probably less trivial. I mean, there's some of that, but we find that a lot of the content is probably concentrated in the redundant and the outdated content. That's where a lot of it really is, that they didn't have policies in place to archive information over a certain period of time. Couple more. Ken, on searchability, have you seen the implementation of Delve as helping circumvent the issue of ROT? It does help some. I mean, Delve right now, I've got mixed reviews on that. I think Microsoft's doing some great things on this idea of the smart intranet, right? Surfacing things that are relevant, and it's actually getting a lot better. So I think that is going to help. But again, it will get rid of some of it, but I've seen Delve bring up ROT before, right? I mean, especially outdated, it's probably not going to do as much because it knows how to choose things that are really, really relevant. But it might be something that's really relevant and two people have changed something that's very similar and you get multiple copies. And I've actually seen that in our own organization of, hey, this looks similar. Do we need to merge those two together or whatever it is? So it definitely helps you kind of sift through it. I wish you could tune Delve a little bit better. But right now, I think maybe some of that will come, and this idea of the smart intranet. But to me, you just got to clean up the back end. You've just got to clean up your content. You got to have a good handle on it, and it might take a few years. That's a project that you can start kind of in parallel. Start with passes. Let's do this department in the next 2 or 3 months or next quarter. Let's do this department. Let's just slowly try to get our content out. This can be one of those ones where kind of small steps add up to big wins. Just start small as you kind of go through it. Great questions. Love those questions. Those are awesome. Hopefully I've answered all of those. If I haven't, shoot me an email with any other questions you have. Be happy to answer all those as well. Hey, Bill, thanks for that. The 2 p.m. one that I had is actually canceled. If you registered for that, I don't know if you had already registered. We actually canceled that webinar. It's different than this, totally different. That one actually focuses completely on the internet. There's just a small adoption piece in it. This one's specifically on adoption. If you shoot me an email, Bill, I will send you a video recording of that. And this is also one that is on Visual SP as well, the Building a Better Internet. But it's totally different than this adoption one. You'll hear some common themes, which is good, but it's totally based on how do I get people to use my internet, and how do I build a better internet that is usable and that people like and want to use. So it is different.
If you would like to automate training and support for your team, install Visual SP, the plug-and-play, instant, and context-sensitive self-help system for SharePoint and Office 365 end users. Over 2 million users in over 200 companies are using Visual SP to boost end-user adoption and reduce the burden on their IT support teams. Using Visual SP's step-by-step intuitive guidance tools, let your colleagues get access to help wherever and whenever they need it, facilitate employee onboarding with always accessible tip sheets, annotated screenshots, step-by-step walkthroughs, and screen capture videos. Accelerate user adoption of your business workflows and improve productivity. To request a free demo and see how Visual SP works, click the link below to go to visualsp.com.